Young and old, every day we eat and drink. Whether you're an infant sucking on a bottle, the bisphenol A issue, or an older person craving for some nice fish and chips, potentially dipped in ink, we all want the assurance that it's safe. And when you're enjoying your fish and chips and then reading in the newspaper about another scandal, it's definitely spoiling your appetite and also not assuring. So it's time to learn more about how food contact is regulated. Together with Wilfred from Keller & Heckman, who has an extensive background in regulatory and government affairs and has worked in several capacities in industry. Wilfred is currently assisting clients on regulatory issues, focusing on food and drug regulation and chemical control laws in Asia. Fish and chips recipes have some varieties all over the world, but it's always the same basics: battered fish and potato chips. Global food regulations therefore are far from harmonized. Could you explain the different approaches countries and regions take?
You are absolutely right. The global food contact regulations are far from harmonized. Unlike the direct food additive, where there has been an international effort primarily under the United Nations FAO and WHO, but for food contact regulations, the efforts of international harmonization is very limited.
Your company, Keller & Heckman, originates from the United States. In the United States, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, their regulation is, among others, based on risk assessment, taking into account the intended conditions of use. Does this regulation explain how industries should verify with their downstream users about the intended use conditions?
The FDA has their own unique system, pre-market approval system, carried by its complication of multiple ways of clearance, and also the food contact notification system. Actually, it's not the obligation of the industry to verify the compliance of their customers. It is the obligation of the business firm to verify or to make sure the compliance of their own products and service.
So it's not that the intended use conditions are somehow fixed, that you have to state you can only use it for. It is more that downstream has to check from upstream if it's correct.
Exactly, but they also have the obligation to communicate the information, the necessary information, to their downstream customers.
The FDA, they also have a GRAS database for chemical substances generally recognized as safe. Does the FDA guarantee the safety of new and existing chemicals added to food in that database?
No, FDA does not really guarantee the safety of any GRAS, the substance per se. In fact, FDA has been very careful in the language in their response letters to any GRAS notification or food contact notification. FDA will typically say something like, we confirm your conclusion. FDA will also typically say something that it is continuous obligation of the business to make sure that their product is still safe based on the latest scientific evidence. And FDA has the authority to either change or withdraw their opinion based on the latest scientific evidence.
China has a positive list of food contact additives, the GB 9685.
Yes.
Is that similar to GRAS?
No, actually it's quite different. In a number of ways, GRAS actually covers both the base polymers and additives, but GB 9685 covers only food packaging additives. GB 9685 listing is generic, meaning anybody, any company can use that substance. And also adds to that complication that GRAS in the US can be self-determined, but GB 9685 listing is mandatory.
For public consultation, are there any significant changes expected?
Well, there are some changes, but I would not call them significant. This time, the amendment of GB 9685 is primarily on its formality in a number of ways. First, it will incorporate the so-called cleanup approvals and also the approvals out as a result from the new administrative approval process into GB 9685. There are also some minor changes, including the removal of a number of phthalate substances to change the title from the awkward old name, food packaging materials and production equipment to food contact substances.
They're also in China consolidating now the various food contact standards and developing a kind of new regulatory framework for food contact. What can we expect from that?
Well, that's actually a very important piece of Chinese regulatory development. China is in the process of creating or significantly amending a number of important standards on food contact regulation. Among other things, China is going to establish a so-called standard on the general safety requirement to food contact materials. That will serve as sort of the framework regulation in the European Union. And in that framework regulation, there will be a very important point, that is the inclusion of a functional barrier concept. That is a very important development in Chinese regulation.
Final question, what do you think is the biggest challenge for industry to ensure food safety and compliance?
For that, I would think about the two things. First of all, it's about the professional capacity of any business to evaluate the status of compliance of their own products and service, and also to check the credibility of declaration of a compliance document from their suppliers. Substance or product is approved, it may go along with certain restrictions or limitations or prescribed conditions of the use. It is the obligation of the business to pass along this message along the value chain to their users and the customers.
Okay, thank you for your expert opinion. I hope we'll still be able to keep enjoying our fish and chips and other foods, and that there will be less food scandals in our newspapers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.